is basically the incredible destabilization of the world and the world order. And I think what I see in my client population around the world is that that is exactly what's happening. And people are, for the first time in my lifetime, actually turning away from the United States
Mhm.
in significant numbers. And I mean purposefully. They're not just casually turning away from us. And a lot of that has to do with the leadership of this country right now, of which, the old order is changing. And what they've discovered is that their old friend isn't much of a friend anymore.
Mhm.
And so in my work, that makes a huge difference because traditionally, if you even look at some of the things that we counsel people about in their preparedness, as far as their developing of resilience plans and crisis management plans, is that, you look at your supply chain. Well, people don't want to buy from the US anymore. And so what's happening is that people are starting to look for all kinds of alternatives to us.
Welcome to another edition to Leaders of Future Shaping video series, where we discuss the future with brilliant leaders across many industries that are repairing and oftentimes reinventing the systems that are broken and are no longer serving us to create greater value and enrich more life. It is a true privilege and an honor to introduce Regina Phelps, the creator behind EMS, the Emergency Management Systems and Safety Solution for Crisis Management. I'll let Dan Beam here tell us why Regina is truly a leader in future shaping.
Well, welcome everybody, and welcome Regina. Uh, Regina is a business leader, an entrepreneur, an author. She's written books. She's uh, has prepared people for a world that is changing, and it's changing rapidly on us. And how do you prepare for that stuff? And how do you prepare for a catastrophe or a crisis or just an issue that can throw you off center? And so Regina does this all over the world. She works with lots of different folks, everything from the World Bank to Stanford to Wells Fargo to Blue Shield to Chevron, and lots of banks and lots of universities and government structures as well. So she's done her work for many years. We met Regina uh, in the early 90s, I think it was. And at that point, we were working on a vision and strategy, a new one for the Chamber of Commerce, because it was having some challenges and they weren't addressing a lot of the issues of the small business. And so she took part in that. And then they very quickly said, we need a different kind of leadership around here. And so they had Regina come in and be the chairman of the board. And she was the first, I think, female and small business chairperson of the chamber. And so that's where we established our relationship. And since then, we've worked on lots of other things together and been friends and been with each other at our homes and so forth. But I think what is important here is uh, we all share a question about what the world is, where the world's going, and what's happening to it. And so we wanted to just do a dialogue and exchange what's happening. We kind of consider Regina the world whisperer. If there are horse whisperers and plant whisperers, she's a world whisperer. She travels the world not only for her work, but she also does it for fun all the time. So she's always out there. She spends more than half of her time out in the outside of the U.S. So she's a world traveler. So that gives a unique perspective, I think, to Regina and some of the points that we'll discuss in just a couple of minutes. So, Regina, is there anything you'd like to say? Did I get it pretty close? Was that?
Good, actually. Yeah. Well, we actually, I was chairman in 91. So you and I and your lovely wife have gone back for even, I think, a little bit before that. So I
Yeah.
think you did a good job of describing me. So I appreciate that.
Well, good. Thank you.
We're in a lot of crisis, and you do crisis management. And yes, I believe that I totally love that you talk about create a network, create a community of belonging, so that there is a support system there. Um, I'm just curious in terms of like managing crisis right now, is there any kind of good nuggets of advice for handling some of this?
In 5 minutes, I
Because
don't know.
we're, to be
Well,
honest, I'm feeling crisis, and I'm in a very cushy position compared to most, and I recognize this. I'm very privileged, but on the day to day with the news, the political turmoil, the environmental turmoil, turmoil in the economy and business, is there any kind of crisis management gold nuggets that you might offer to help us kind of hold this complexity right now?
well, what I would say is this, is that most organizations, or a huge number of organizations, don't don't have a process, don't have a structure about how they manage anything. And so
Mm.
one of the things that I spend a lot of time in companies doing is actually creating the process, the methodology about how they manage things. And what happens in most organizations that have never committed to do that is that what occurs is that when a bad thing happens, the executives sort of take over, which isn't necessarily helpful.
Yes,
Mhm.
Right?
yes.
I mean, so there needs to be a process. Executives, uh, what I would say to you is this: if I was speaking to executives, I always say this, like, you only have 4 jobs. You only have 4 jobs in a crisis. One is what I call essentially strategic decision making. Strategic decision making, not the tactics about how you manage it. You have a lot of qualified people below you that do tactics.
Mhm.
So you need to do that. Secondly, you're the person that's going to approve a large expenditure of funds above the signing authority of the people below you.
Mhm.
Thirdly, you have what I call the responsibility for senior relationship management. So essentially is when you have a big problem in your company, you need to go talk to the other big people, like your big customers at the CEO level or the governor or whomever. You need senior people to talk to senior people. And then lastly, if it's really, really bad, then you're probably going to have your executive at least be occasionally an on-camera person to actually explain. You want mom or dad to show up and say, what happened. And I'll give you an example. In my client population, we've had 47 murders, workplace violence, in the last 25 years. The first press conference that happens, the CEO is the person who's talking. You
That's
need
right.
dad or mom, whoever that is, to basically talk about that. They're not on camera forever after that, but they need to actually stand up. So I need the executives to understand what their job, and they only have the 4 that I mentioned. And then you need a strong, established tactical team below you that has their responsibilities in managing the recovery of the organization, as long as the executives sort of stay in their lane. Now, if it's
Mhm.
really a small organization, like less than 1,000, they're going to basically have the executives do both. But in the large companies that I work with, you
Mhm.
have a tiered system. And most companies don't ever think about that in advance. And so they're a mess. And that's what I spend a good part of my life trying to fix.
Well, I want to reinforce that. That's so true. We've actually been telling our business clients, especially, they always say, I want a strategic plan. We've done lots of so-called strategic plans, year plans, all those kind of things. I said, no, what you really need is strategic process.
Right.
It's the
Mhm.
way you go about
There's no
doing things.
there's no plan you pull out and go like, oh, I'm going to do this.
That's
No.
right. No, you need a process for handling this or handling that, and that's what you focus on. Even if it's not a crisis, if it's a marketing challenge in the marketplace or something like this, what's your process for handling that? Don't just tell me you got a goal and some actions you're going to take. That's fine. You can have some of that to support it, but you need to make sure that the processes that govern all that, the over umbrella of that, are in place and well understood. And most don't have strategic processes. They have plans with a goal and a few actions. They don't
Yep.
understand the
Mhm.
difference.
And then they pull it out and there's nothing there to help them.
That's
Yeah.
right.
How are decisions getting made? Right?
Yeah.
That's the process for how decisions are getting made, I think, is one of the biggest um, problems I've seen in the business
Right.
world.
And I think what
It's not that
happens,
decisions aren't being made. It's just how they're being made is also
right.
part of the big problem.
And also the ones, frankly, I'll tell you in a crisis, the decisions that the executives want to go to immediately are all the tactical ones.
Hmm.
Why?
Yeah.
It's because they're easy to make. It's the
Mhm.
strategic decisions that are much more challenging and that they have to really be cogitating at their level. And the tactics about how you're managing, the actual event in that moment, that's not a senior relationship job. That's not what they should be working on.
That's right. And that's the difference between strategy, because a strategy is one in which you say what not to do.
Mhm.
And what you don't do is still running around chasing after little tactics. It doesn't work.
Right.
It doesn't, it has to be a
Doesn't
real
solve the problem at their level, right?
yeah.
Still
Yeah.
there. And I
This is
see that all the time. All
uh
the time.
yes. So part of what you're doing when you're talking about dealing with crisis, you're also saying this is how you should actually be running your business.
Well,
Yeah,
It's
yeah, I can't really say that out loud.
we can
this,
say it for you.
Yeah, I can't really say that.
yes, we'll tell
Well,
them.
what you're doing is you're building resiliency in.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
that's my gig, right? Is resiliency technically, right?
yeah, I mean, I remember when I worked in innovation, one of the things is that we did was we would have a process where we threw in contingencies and simulations to blow up our strategy.
Yep.
Like it's like critical thinking. Like you have to prove that that your theory uh, isn't true
Yeah.
and work that way as opposed to that it absolutely is true,
Right.
right? So
Right.
we would throw all sorts of curveballs in the innovation process to
Mhm.
see what is standing left over and what needs to be built,
Mhm.
as opposed to coming in with that kind of hubris that we have a plan.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Right.
and
Exactly.
also what needs to be reduced or gotten rid of.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Uh, I remember we were working with Levi's in Europe uh, several years back, and we were doing all the strategies and the directions of the market and things like this. And it was all good stuff, but we were realizing that so much stuff was coming out of the market from the various locations. You know, they had all these countries that they were managing together in Europe and Middle East, and they were they were listening to what they were saying, and so there were so many myths and misconceptions. We just said, okay, we're going to put a big sheet of paper on the wall, as you know, big sheets of paper,
I remember
and
that with you.
We
and we
still do
put one.
that.
Hey, we do.
Well, it gets people interacting,
Totally.
and it was like 24 feet long. We had over 300 people there, and we started generating all these ideas of what do you think is true? And we put all these things down, and then with the CEO and some of the other leaders, we walk through them and go, well, that's not true. Well, that's not true. I
Mhm.
don't want you doing that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Mhm.
So all these things get distorted very quickly in organizations about what the truths are. And so some so part of your strategy is strategic thinking is what to eliminate, what to take off the plate, what to obviate that should not even have been there in the first place. So
The way that we
Yeah.
do that in my work is we design exercises. So I've done I've done now I'm approaching 3,800 exercises. And these aren't like little, games that you play in a parlor, so to speak. These are like significant exercises at both at executive levels, at the tactical level, and now I've been doing a fair number with corporate boards. And the idea is that you kind of I create a movie, if you will, and I drop them into it. And I have an AV team as part of my company that creates news videos that look like the real deal. And we are talking about some incredibly awful thing that just happened at your company, and you have to then figure out what the hell you're going to do. And so what I found is that you can train people, you can write plans, you can do all that crap, but the most important thing is we design exercises that make them actually have to do it.
mhm, mhm. I
Brilliant.
think that's
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah, it's super
That
powerful.
immersive part, and this is Drew and I were just talking about this. He's a consultant to the Miro boards that you can use with problem solving and things like this with Zoom and everything else like this. And he was just taking part in a session this last week. And you were saying how they're trying to get it to be all AI driven, to the point that they would actually have an AI facilitator, not a person.
Yeah,
And
there's a big thing right now around AI facilitation, and it's, training an agent, an AI agent to field certain questions, but then at the same time was, for the participants, the people that are in like group breakout sessions and whatnot,
Mhm.
giving them all sorts of dashboards that they can tweak to say how they like something or how they feel about something, and da 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 da. Like, basically like we think that we need real-time data, but what we really need is real-time presence, and then real-time insight. Well, after that, insights, right? In perspective on how that
Right.
information is being metabolized. But the thing, I was like looking at this thing and I was like, oh my God, you're asking people to pat their head and rub their belly, and they're not actually present in the moment, and being a part of the group. And it's, I found that a little concerning. I know AI is encroaching on almost every
Everything.
facet of enterprise right now. But I was like, the one thing that we kind of have as human beings is facilitation and dialogue and socialization and the exchange of ideas and feelings.
Mhm.
Um, let's not put a widget in front of that,
Yep. Well,
you know?
it's funny, like when we design exercises, so I'm an expert in exercise design, but I'm not an expert in the company that hires us. So I work with we call a design team, an exercise design team. And it's a group of professionals. I sort of list the categories of people. I need an HR person, I need a legal person, or whatever the narrative is. And then they help me create the actual exercise. So we create the baseline narrative, and then what drives an exercise forward is not just the baseline narrative, is what we drop in, which are called exercise injects. So essentially, as the exercise progresses, I'm writing an inject, and oh, this one's going to Drew, and oh, this one's going to Dan, and this next one's going to Meredith, and it's just to you, just like in the real world. And
Mhm.
you get a piece of information, then you need to make a decision. Who do I talk to? Blah, blah, blah. And they have to work through it. Now, I'm
Mhm.
sure at some point maybe some AI agent can do that, but until that, I'll probably be dead by then. But
But I love it because I think what you're talking about is like kind of like simulation. This happens in gaming, it happens in the military, but
that's exactly what an exercise is.
right, yeah. I mean, you throw a scenario at somebody and they have to problem solve in real time.
Right,
And I think, some of, a lot of corporations and companies, they get the luxury of time to kind of like sit back and then send it to their board and then have, but the reality is that crisis happens. And when
right,
crisis happens, is what is our decision making process? What
right,
is our process for, uh, socializing this problem, and
right.
who takes it on? I think it's brilliant that what you're doing. And I,
It's super powerful. It changes companies. And,
Mhm.
I mean, and what I find is that when people hire us, I mean, some of the biggest companies in the world, they don't even have a process about even who would come together to assess a problem to know whether it's big enough, is it bigger than a bread box or not, right? I mean, like,
Mhm.
oh my God. So we actually, when people hire us, we sort of do all of that from the ground up. But I will tell you that even though I could write the best plans in the universe, what only makes people good is an exercise. And so that's what and I've written the 4 books I've written, 3 of them are on exercise design. And they're actually taught there's quite a few universities now that have an area of discipline that I'm in. And my book is a textbook in like 300 universities now in the United States.
Mhm.
Wow.
And,
Yeah.
you
Wow.
know, yeah,
Well, because in exercise, it's interplay between humans to humans.
right. Right. And so and what you do is you need a really good narrative that really nails it, right? I need
Mhm.
to know when I design an exercise, my first question and over and over again is like, why are we doing this? Oh, my CEO is worried about ransomware. Well, why is he concerned about ransomware? Well, because, he's concerned about ABC. Oh, well, why is that? Oh, we don't think our comms team is very good. Well, why don't you think they're very, I mean, the idea is that you just keep asking the why, what question and I can design an entire thing.
Yeah, five
Mhm.
levels of why. Why?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Little kids taught us that a long time ago when Andrew was small.
Totally.
Everything was
Yeah,
why.
yeah. Why is the sky blue? Well, and then there'll be another why, right?
Right, exactly. If you understand that, then you can design something that will nail it, right?
Yes.
My job is to nail it. So people hire me because I am really good at exercise design and I'm good at facilitating them. And so that's what I spend probably 70% of my time on.
Yes, yes.
Mm.
Yeah, and that's the difference that they talk about what cannot be. One guy was asked, head of one of the high tech companies, basically, what jobs are safe and what aren't safe, and he says, well, basically, you got to think that if you're in front of a screen and that's your way of making things happen, you're probably at a risk.
Mm.
At a risk. Now, not that we don't need and use screens, of course, but if your whole being revolves around a screen, then you're probably at risk.
I would
So
think.
yeah, so it needs to be with people. It needs to be with exercises. It needs to be with doing something together, feeling the resonance with one another, being present with the feelings. That can't be replaced.
Right. Very true.
We are calling out to all you future shapers out there, folks and brands creating more value and enriching life. Are you or do you know an inspiring leader or a brand building a more regenerative future? We want to hear from you. At Beam, we are a design and strategy agency working with all levels of leadership and businesses, co-creating futures that's more rewarding for people, businesses, and our planet. Whether you are interested in being featured in our media or ready to take your enterprise into a new era, please visit us at beaminc.com. We would love to connect with you and explore shaping the future together.